With MLS being the most expanding major league in America right now, we're seeing more and more teams with more and more new stadiums coming out every single year. This gave me an idea to rank the 29 different stadiums that MLS teams called home in the 2023 season. So starting off week at number 29, we have none other than Yankee Stadium of New York City FC. Soccer in a baseball stadium just does not work, in my opinion. I feel this one is pretty self-explanatory, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. But if you look at this seating setup, it's just awful. You've got one set of the field stands that are 100 feet away from the field, and on the other side you have the right outfield, which is way too few seats, and they're just not oriented in an easy way to watch the game. It's honestly just kind of embarrassing that an MLS team calls this their stadium or their home, because it just fucking blows and is not a good game day experience at all. NYCFC is getting their own soccer-specific stadium in Queens in the next couple of years, though.
New York City's first professional soccer-specific stadium, first of its time.
It's supposed to be the very first ever soccer-specific stadium in the US that's fully electric, and it's also going to have some affordable housing constructed right next to it. So I am genuinely really excited to see how this turns out, because I think this has the possibility of being one of the best stadiums in the league. So overall, New York City FC's stadium situation as it is right now, pretty shitty. But their future looks like it's going to be pretty good, so I'm excited for them. Number 28, Gillette Stadium of New England Revolution. This might be sort of surprising for a lot of people who expected me to go to a particularly windy city. However, I do think that Gillette Stadium is the second worst stadium situation in the league right now. The stadium itself is just so meh. It has the feeling of a very default NFL stadium, which just does not give a good vibe to MLS games. There are a couple stadiums that have the same problems that I just said, but I think what pushes Gillette down to 28th is its location. Being in Foxborough, the stadium is nowhere near the downtown metro area of Boston, which sucks because a lot of MLS fans are somewhat young, and these young people are usually living in downtown metro areas, so the Revolution Stadium is extremely disconnected from their fan base. Thankfully, in November of 2023, I saw an article that the team has received some of the most promising news in franchise history of actually getting its own soccer-specific stadium in Everett, Massachusetts. This would be such a better location, and having a 25,000-seat stadium would finally give the Rev the more intimate soccer experience it deserves, because at the end of the day, MLS games are not going to sell over 65,000 tickets a game to fill out Gillette. Overall, I'm pretty optimistic for the Rev's future, but as it stands, their stadium situation's kind of dog. Number 27, Soldier Field of Chicago Fire. Soldier Field is pretty rough. Being one of the most historic stadiums, the complex itself is liked by Chicago, but with a bunch of questionable renovations and a lack of any winning teams that play in the stadium, its future is honestly pretty uncertain. The look of the stadium I don't dislike at all, but it just doesn't really work as an MLS stadium once again. It's just way too big and leads to a disgusting lack of atmosphere. And while the stadium being so close to downtown is really cool, and is what puts it higher than Gillette Stadium, the facility itself is surprisingly difficult to get to. I'm also not really sure if there's any solid or promising future plans of having a soccer-specific stadium, so things aren't honestly looking too good for the Fire. I'm a St. Louis fan and native, so I'm supposed to always hate Chicago and their sports teams, but goddamn does the Chicago Fire make it so hard to hate them. The organization really just has absolutely nothing going for it, and I think their stadium situation is a perfect representation of the Fire in general. Number 26, Bank of America Stadium of Charlotte FC. Bank of America is another meh stadium in MLS. It once again has a very default NFL stadium feel, which is just once again way too big for MLS. While Charlotte has some of the best fans in the league who come to games in some of the largest numbers in the league, the stadium is still just too big to allow for a filled, intimate experience for the fans. I will say, I like the color of the seats. Most of the stadiums so far really give off the feeling of, yeah, this is not our stadium, we are simply renting it from another team. But the very basic detail of the seats actually lining up perfectly with Charlotte's colors really makes it feel at least a little bit more like home. And this, I think, is what puts it higher than the stadiums that I've mentioned so far. Once again, not exactly a great stadium, and I hope Charlotte does get a soccer-specific stadium pretty soon.
Pacheco for Rios. Trying to shake loose from Edwards. Taken here, Ruiz! Sergio Ruiz! 2-0 Charlotte! Garrett Jones, the exclamation point! And it's bedlam in the Queen City!
Number 25, Dick's Sporting Goods Park of Colorado Rapids. Unfortunately, this is the lowest ranked soccer-specific stadium on the entire list. The stadium itself is one of the older soccer-specific ones on the list, being built in 2007. But despite being a pretty old stadium, it doesn't have the same grace that old stadiums have because it's honestly not that old yet. It's in that really awkward period that a lot of the oldest MLS stadiums are in. Old enough to feel really outdated and not the best, but also not old enough to have that old nice charm that a lot of people like from their stadiums. The seating is just a bunch of metal bleachers. The colors themselves don't really scream the Colorado Rapids. The design of the stadium lacks real walls to make it feel like an intimate, closed atmosphere. So I don't know, I'm just not really a huge fan of this place, and I think it needs some serious renovations to be on the same level as the rest of the league. Unfortunately, the Rapids aren't exactly known for investing in the team all the time to see it succeed, which in all honesty, who could have seen that coming from a club owned by Stan Kroenke? Regardless, I don't think I could really see me putting any other soccer-specific stadium below Dick's Sporting Goods Park. It's just not that good. Number 24, PayPal Park of San Jose Earthquakes. PayPal Park has some really good characteristics that I like. I really love the seat colors and the pattern in the stands. I also think that it looks pretty cool and modern from the outside. However, there are definitely some pretty glaring issues that hold this stadium back, making it what I would consider the lowest ranked modern soccer-specific stadium as it opened in 2015. First off, the stadium only has 3 stands, and the 4th stand is just completely empty. I think this subtracts a lot from the complete feeling that I want a stadium to exude. Some people say it's cool because from the open side you get a nice view of the nearby airport and the planes lifting off, which is cool. But in my opinion, not cool enough to justify just cutting out an entire side of the stadium. Also, the seats are raised above the play of the field, which once again creates a pretty large separation of fans from the field, hurting that intimate feeling of being right next to the play. So yeah, I think there's just some genuinely pretty obvious design flaws that I don't really like about this stadium. Number 23, Saputo Stadium of Montreal. Saputo Stadium once again suffers from a pretty major issue that PayPal Park suffers from. The stadium doesn't really feel very complete. It looks alright from the outside, and I actually love the color and design of the seats, but the 4th side of the stadium just being drastically smaller than the other sides and not even attached really hurts the vibe of the stadium. I'm no design expert, but I feel like a lot of the noise and just general atmosphere that the stands create are able to just kind of escape through the large gaps between the stands, which I think really hurts the general vibe of the game. It also feels like completely overshadowed by the nearby Olympic Stadium, which kind of blows because the Olympic Stadium looks so cool next to Saputo Stadium. Apparently the field also has kind of a history of being in terrible shape, which sucks because it is really cool that they have an actual grass field that far up north in Canada, but with a field that is like consistently in not too great shape, it feels really amateur and I don't think really gives a good look to Major League Soccer. Overall, just not a huge fan of this stadium. Number 22, Drive Pink Stadium of Inter Miami. Miami has so much potential for a stadium, and I am beyond excited to see what Freedom Park in 2025 is like. But as of now, we only have Drive Pink Stadium. The stadium itself is a temporary stadium, and for being a temporary stadium, I think it looks incredible. But for being the main stadium that the team is currently playing in, it's really not that good. First, with some of the positives, I think these might be some of, if not my favorite seats in the entire league. The colors are so satisfying and I love the pattern. It really fits the team perfectly. They also have box seats that are at the level of the field, which I think is perfect for a Miami stadium. Especially as of late, for some reason, a lot of stars and celebrities who are in Miami have been going to the games. And for them to be able to be at the field level and integrate with the players a bit kind of gives another level to the whole game day experience. It feels kind of like a party to see what celebrities and famous people are going to be there talking to the fans and hanging out, which I think is just a really cool aspect that a Miami team could definitely take advantage of. There's also some really good roofing that covers the seats, which I think is pretty important for a stadium that's in Miami, Florida. And the little cherry on top is the pink goal nets, which I think are a really cool touch and just scream Miami. But even with all these really good things, there's a lot of really not good things. First off, the stadium honestly doesn't really feel like much of a stadium. The stands by the goals are completely separated from the sideline stands, which lets a lot of the noise out, and it kind of gives the vibe of like a really rich high school stadium. Also, it's just not in Miami, it's in Fort Lauderdale. With Messi and friends, they've brought in some more stands to put in the corners to kind of fill the gaps, but even with that, the stadium just does not feel really great. It's going to be really cool when the Miami Stadium is actually in Miami, and I'm really looking forward to Freedom Park because I think it has potential to be one of the best MLS stadiums, if not a world-class venue to go to watch some soccer.
Messi!
Number 21, Toyota Stadium of FC Dallas. Toyota Stadium is a very old MLS stadium being built in 2005. But despite this, I think it has aged honestly somewhat well, at least compared to other stadiums built around that time. They have a lot of red, blue, and white in the seat colors, as well as a simplistic FC Dallas written into the seats, which I think represents the team in a very classic way. It's very simple for sure, which isn't exactly a bad thing, but I do think it has aged, and it couldn't hurt to see some renovations. I really like stadiums with a good number of seats on all four sides, and Toyota Stadium has a majority of their seats on the two sidelines. There's a little decent chunk on one of the end lines, and then the other end line is pretty much completely barren with a concert stage for events other than FC Dallas games. It's honestly not that big of a deal because there are a decent number of seats in the stadium, and the concert stage does look pretty cool. Something to note, this stadium is in Dallas, Texas, where it can get a little bit hot and sunny, to say the least. And Toyota Stadium has very little roofs, which I could totally see affecting people's game day experiences. Overall, this isn't a bad stadium, and it's not a great one either. I think some renovations and some simple love couldn't hurt to make it fit up a bit better with the more modern stadiums that are in MLS now. Number 20, American First Field of Real Salt Lake. I feel kind of weird putting the stadium so low, as there's nothing like glaringly wrong with it in my opinion. I really like the shape of the roof, I like the classic text Real Salt Lake in the stands. The light system with the roof also looks really cool. And there's even like a funny concrete soccer ball near the stadium, which is kind of cool. The stadium also has this super cool view of some mountains nearby, which I really like. But despite all this pretty cool stuff, I just don't think anything about it really wows me, and so I feel like this is a decent spot on the list for it. Not a bad stadium, not a great one either, and I think they probably could have done a bit more. Also, I don't really love the name. Feels weird. But yeah. Number 19, Dignity Health Sports Park of LA Galaxy. Another very old MLS soccer-specific stadium, opening in 2003, Dignity Health Sports Park has definitely stood the test of time. Despite being very old and built when the league was much smaller than it is now, the park still has a whopping 27,000 seats. This makes it the second biggest soccer-specific stadium in the US, which is honestly crazy for when it was built. I really like the roofs and how it's even on both sides but doesn't connect all the way around. Makes it feel kind of like a football bowl stadium. And in Galaxy's heyday, when people were really going to these games, the videos I've seen are crazy and the atmosphere looks so fun. I will say, I think some more could be done with the seats to really make the stadium feel like the Galaxy's home. As of right now, it's just a bunch of black seats, except for on the very end of the field, which is filled with blue seats, and then a recreation of the incredible LA Galaxy Quasar with LA on both sides of it. If the stadium were to be filled with more colorful patterns and iconography like the end, I would definitely be moving the stadium up. However, as of right now, it kind of feels a little bit lackluster and sort of uninspired. Not a terrible stadium though whatsoever.
Question, it's all very tight in there. Here's Chicharito. Javier Hernandez, winning goal! 90th minute, lift off on opening weekend for the Galaxy. It's the mercurial yet magical Mexican who has capped off opening day.
Number 18, BC Place of Vancouver Whitecaps. BC Place is a multi-purpose arena in Vancouver that has around 55,000 seats. While the stadium itself is gorgeous on the outside and has a really cool, interesting circular interior with a retractable roof, with the roof closed on a packed house, the atmosphere can be absolutely incredible in this stadium as the sound echoes throughout the building. However, the stadium is massive and unfortunately, MLS games often cannot attract over 50,000 people to a regular season game usually. So the stadium's lower bowl is usually the only part of the building that's open to fans. Despite the large size of the stadium and the large section of the stadium that's closed off for most games, I think they do a really good job of creating as intimate of an experience as they can, especially when compared to similarly sized stadiums. BC Place is also right in the middle of downtown Vancouver, so it's definitely a really cool venue with a lot of cool stuff going on around it. Still, I would love to see the Whitecaps with the soccer-specific stadium that's more geared towards MLS games regarding its size. However, the complete lack of reporting on that as a possibility or interest by the organization doesn't seem like that'll be happening anytime soon. BC Place is a really cool venue that, as a building, is probably a lot cooler than most of the stadiums I'm about to mention after this. But I am ranking these stadiums based on how well I think they serve as MLS stadiums, and I just don't know how I feel about BC Place being the permanent location for the Whitecaps. Overall, I definitely don't hate it. I think it is a really cool spot for them to play, but it is not the highest ranked Canadian stadium in this list. Number 2017, BMO Field of Toronto FC. BMO Field is honestly pretty cool. I don't exactly get a strong soccer-specific vibe from the stadium, however it works better than a lot of other more multi-purpose buildings work. The stadium has almost 31,000 seats, and last season on average the game sold around 80% of the tickets with around 24,000 per game. So while the size of the stadium isn't obnoxious to a point where the vibe or atmosphere of games is heavily hampered by it, I do think Toronto could possibly benefit from a slightly smaller stadium to really sell out all their seats. I do love the roofing on the stadium and how it looks from the outside. The seating also has this really badass maple leaf in the middle. Ultimately, I really like the simplicity of the seating in this stadium. The plain red just kind of makes it feel very complete, and if they had done more with it, I think it might have felt a little messy and overdone. BMO Field also has that same football bowl stadium feel that Dignity Health Sports Park gave off. The two massive sideline stands with their elevated roofs kind of just allow the noise from each stands to go over to the other and just keep doing that, really creating this really cool experience. Overall, I really like BMO Field, putting it as the highest ranked Canadian stadium in this list.
And here's Victor Vasquez. Jovinko. Altidore is onside here. Josie Altidore through on goal. It's Josie Altidore! And the deadlock is broken by Josie Altidore! The midway mark in the second half. Josie Altidore sets BMO Field alight on Toronto's biggest night.
Number 16, Subaru Park of Philadelphia Union. Subaru Park is built right next to the Delaware River with an incredible backdrop of the Commodore Barry Bridge crossing the river right next to the stadium. The seating of the stadium is that Philly dark blue and it has this nice Union written into it with a golden shadow. The stadium has these two elevated rounded roofs above the sideline stands. The inline stands closer to the river is just this nice small gray section, and the other inline seating is this extension of the sideline sections to create a really nice closed atmosphere. The stadium itself is pretty standard, and I think it fits the Philly crowd very well, with around 18,500 seats. I also absolutely love the nearby vicinity with the river and the bridge backdrop. If there were to be like an MLS The Show type game, I feel like Subaru Park would definitely be one of the classic backdrop stadiums. From what I've heard online, it's in Chester, Philadelphia, which isn't exactly the best place supposedly. Whether or not that's actually true or really affects the game day experience, I don't know. Overall, I really like the stadium, but I think a lot of other stadiums in the league are just done a little bit better, which is why I'm putting it at number 14 here, roughly in the middle of the list.
Back to Martinez, two Venezuelans together. Cleared out, Glesnes fires! Glesnes goal!
Number 15, Red Bull Arena of the New York Redbulls. I'm sort of a Redbulls fan, which is definitely weird because I'm just not from New York, and they also aren't exactly the best team at being for the community or being loved in general. Not to mention the fact that Red Bull buying out tons of teams all over the world can feel somewhat gross and off-putting to a lot of people. But regardless, their stadium has 25,000 seats, and it's a very classic European cookie-cutter Red Bull stadium. While not being unique from other Red Bull arenas, I do love the Red Bull Stadium look. It feels very classic and does a really good job of just creating a good atmosphere. The arena is completely closed on all four sides and four corners, with roofs going over the seating to really trap and allow the sound to reverberate. While Red Bull Arena rarely does have a good atmosphere, I think it's got more to do with the organization and lack of fan support due to that than it does with the stadium's design. The blue seating all around feels very classic, and it has a nice Red Bull logo in the middle, which looks super sick. The seating in the roof at the top raises up and makes sort of like an arch in the middle, which adds just enough pizzazz to make it not feel extremely boring with all the other somewhat conservative stadium decisions. The location of the stadium is kind of rough because, for once being the only team based in New York and having the stadium in New Jersey feels not great. It really is a perfect example of a serious problem that a lot of stadium owners have, with them just not being willing to do what it takes to get an MLS stadium in more prime location within their city, and thus just kind of saying fuck it and making the stadium somewhere in the suburbs. Overall, I really like the stadium, and I think it's really classic, but I think its location just really pulls it down, making it number 15. Number 14, Audi Field of DC United. This might be a pretty controversial pick because I know there is a cult following behind Audi Field, and I can kind of see it. The stadium has a lot of really cool aspects that I think really just scream DC. The seats all have that nice red, white, and black/gray colorway that is DC's colors. The stadium itself is also different on every side. One of the sidelines has a multi-level seating, and the other is one large, massive seating section. One of the end lines is just a steep, full seating section that has a really cool DC United etched into the seating, which is really imposing and just looks super cool. And then the other end has about half the seats with a TV screen above the seats, and on the right side of the section, it's completely empty to let the outside see into the stadium. And while I do appreciate the fluidity of the stadium and how not any one side is the exact same, I personally am just unfortunately not a huge fan of the open section. I think that imposing, extremely steep steps scream DC, and it helps really push that scary vibe into away teams' hearts. However, the open section kind of just ruins that imposing claustrophobic vibe that the stadium is supposed to have. I know it's an interesting and unique part of the stadium, but unique doesn't always mean good, and for me, I don't really love that touch. I do really love the roofs above the seating, and I think it kind of helps really connect all the sides into one, which really does help create an incredible atmosphere to trap the sound. Ultimately, the stadium is really cool and unique, but it has some design decisions that I don't exactly vibe with, so I think number 14 on the list is a pretty healthy spot for it. Number 13, Children's Mercy Park of Sporting Kansas City. The immediate thing you notice is the extremely unique exterior roof that starts low on one end and slowly creeps up, snaking around the entire stadium. It also has that perfect blue to represent Sporting as well, and just goddamn, the stadium just does such a good job of sticking out while also looking extremely modern and sleek. The inside of the stadium feels pretty standard with a single level seating on all four sides. One of the sideline seating sections has this really badass looking Sporting written into it with white seats. And overall, I just feel like the stadium looks so modern, especially for when it was made. I will say the location of the stadium kinda sucks. It's on the Kansas side of the Kansas City border, which isn't great and makes it nowhere close to the main area of the city. The nearby racetrack and department store are the only things that are really close to the stadium. And their location does technically make Sporting the one and only major league team situated in Kansas. Overall, the stadium is really cool, and I think they do a lot of decisions right, and it just feels nice. However, I think there is a lot of room for improvement, and thus making number 13 a pretty healthy spot for them.
Corner here, Susi, Colin! Equaliser! In front of the cauldron, Aurelian Colin breathes life back into Kansas City's title hopes.
Number 12, Lumen Field of Seattle Sounders. Lumen Field is one of the few multi-purpose / NFL stadiums that I think really works. The stadium is known for being extremely loud and having a very imposing vibe. The 2 sideline stands are massive 2-layer football stands that hold thousands of fans. For most Sounders games, the top level is marked off with large Sounders banners, and I think they do a pretty good job of turning the massive NFL stadium into a stadium that feels reasonable to house an MLS team. Most NFL stadiums just feel way too big for MLS, and they kind of just swallow the fans. However, due to a combination of just massive fan support and turnout, as well as some smart stadium design tactics, I think the building feels pretty reasonably sized for most Sounders games. The color scheme also just feels right for Seattle and the Sounders in turn. Overall, the Sounders have been an MLS powerhouse forever, and that in part I think is due to their incredible stadium atmosphere and the home advantage that gives their team. Overall, Lumen Field is definitely one of the most classic MLS game day fields ever.
Germany in the 1960s and set up Schmetzer's Sporthouse, which was the place where you go to buy soccer gear. Here comes Rui Diaz through the middle to crown it for Seattle. And now they truly can start the celebrations. It's the Sounders.
Number 11, Mercedes-Benz Stadium of Atlanta United FC. Following Lumen Field, the Mercedes-Benz Stadium is the absolute best non-soccer specific stadium in the entire league. The futuristic, modern, massive exterior has a very imposing vibe for away teams entering the building. The interior has that perfect Atlanta red seats, and while some more designs and patterns I think could have been done to represent the United, you do have to remember that they share the stadium with the Falcons, so ultimately that was never going to happen. But I don't think it really detracts too much. The stadium was designed as a world-class football venue, but also to hold the MLS team and provide a good atmosphere despite being big enough for an NFL team. With the top bowl usually being closed for MLS games and an overarching roof covering the field, the overall atmosphere, vibe, and sound really feel effectively trapped within the building to provide a great game day experience. Also, they have some of the cheapest stadium food in the entire country with cheap beer, food, pretzels, whatever you want. I've seen pictures of people eating full meals for under $20 in the stadium, which is crazy. The South, whether a lot of people realize it or not, has a lot of deprived soccer fans who for a long time never really had a team of their own to root for. So with teams like Atlanta popping up who are succeeding in the league and giving their fans an incredible game day feel with a gorgeous stadium, the organization is seeing a lot of success in the fan support department. Overall, I love this stadium. I love that Atlanta is able to actually fill an NFL stadium for an MLS game and not have it feel embarrassingly empty. And I'm excited to see more teams throughout the country have the success that Atlanta has had.
Up against Truna. Delivers. Chance! It's a goal! Atlanta have won it! Won't you believe it? The final play of the match! Welcome back, 17s!
Breaking into number 10, we have Shell Energy Stadium of the Houston Dynamo. Shell Energy Stadium has, in my opinion, one of the coolest looking exteriors in the league. It has such a sleek, modern look that I just love. The interior feels pretty well fleshed out too. The orange seats are a very cool piece of the stadium that are really unique in the league and just screams the Dynamo. One of the sideline seating areas has a big Houston etched into it with black lettering into the orange seats that I think looks really cool. One thing that puts Shell Energy a bit higher than some other Texas stadiums is the fact that they have pretty good roofing. There's a decent amount of seating that's in the sun or in the shade depending on which one you prefer, which is definitely a huge plus for a stadium that's in Texas. I will say, fuck Shell Energy. That is a crazy stadium company sponsor to have, but I guess that their oil money can afford a pretty good MLS stadium, so there's that. Number 9, BMO Stadium of LAFC. BMO Stadium is the best soccer-specific stadium in Los Angeles, and in large part is why LAFC has been able to start carving out a chunk of fans in LA away from the Galaxy. The stadium's location is far better than the Galaxy's Dignity Health Sports Park, being much closer to downtown and not in the suburbs, which makes the game day atmosphere a lot more fun with more interesting things to do nearby. The outside of the stadium has a really cool fluid look to it, and on the inside you've got one of the most imposing fields to play away on, with massive double layer stands on the sidelines to hold plenty of fans. The stadium is not connected all the way around, with open corners and one sideline section being partially dislocated from the rest of the stadium. However, I think they do it in a way that doesn't really pull away or dampen from the atmosphere of the stadium. With a stadium like Saputo, for example, it really feels like it disconnects some fans from the game. However, BMO Stadium is designed in a way that gives the stadium slightly more open atmosphere while also holding a lot of that volume within the stands. I feel like this is in part because while the corners are not fully connected, they also aren't completely empty, with some of them having pretty small stands on the bottom to hold fans, and then an open section on the top to really show off the LA skyline. The ceiling above all four sides of the field stands also do a great job of catching that sound and essentially flinging it right back where it came from towards the middle of the stadium. Ultimately, LAFC has a loud, excited fan base, and their stadium is designed to really benefit from this and give the team a very strong home advantage. The seating is a very classic, alternating pattern between gold and black that represents LAFC. And while I think maybe a little bit more could have been done there, I think it also just kind of fits the stadium and prevents it from feeling cluttered. The stadium is easily one of the best on the league, and I think the organization knew that it had to be. Once again, with a team like Galaxy being historically one of the most successful teams in the league, you really need to wow the city to bring support over to a new team. And with the huge fan base LAFC has been able to grow, they clearly have been successful at converting a lot of Galaxy fans. So yeah, BMO Field kind of fucks.
Right on at this point. Can LAFC find a way back in? Elie to Palacios to the byline. Palacios clipping it up.
Number 8, TQL Stadium of FC Cincinnati. TQL Stadium is such an incredible stadium that is extremely unlucky because it still is only the second best stadium in its state. The outside of TQL Stadium is yet another exterior that I absolutely love. It has such a cool modern look. I think the glass walls allow a lot of the light into the stadium, as well as it lets a lot of people from the outside get a general idea of the atmosphere inside the stadium, which kind of makes the stadium feel a bit more connected to the city. The interior has a really nice blue and orange colorway that really screams Cincinnati. They also have some pretty cool designs into the seating with an FCC on one of the end lines, and the Cincy Lion made an orange on one of the sideline stands, which looks super cool. Some things that are pretty common in just about all these upper level stadiums, because I feel like it's important. Every side of the field has a healthy seating section to hold as many fans as it can, and every seat in the house has an incredible view of the field. There's also roofing that goes over the seats on every side, which once again helps trap that vibrant atmosphere as well as prevent people from getting crazy sunburns. These stadiums are designed to be efficient, and they don't let any bit of volume leave the stadium to make sure that away teams know that they're away teams. TQL Stadium also has a section called the Bailey, which is a key part of Cincy's success, as it is their main fan group section, where the fans stand during the game, sing chants, bang drums, and do all of the game day activities like using flags and smokes. Lots of stadiums lack a fan section powerhouse like this, and so the Bailey is once again just another large part of why TQL Stadium is so highly ranked. Number 7, Providence Park of Portland Timbers. Providence Park is one of the coolest soccer locations in the entire country. Remnants of the stadium have existed as far back as 1893, and as of 2011, after some renovations to reach MLS standards, the stadium is now considered a soccer-specific park. Thus, this makes it the oldest stadium to, at least nowadays, be considered a soccer-specific park in the United States. Throughout the years, this building was a fish market, a baseball field, a football field, and now is even home to the Portland Nitro, an ultimate frisbee professional team. So the park has seen a lot of history and thus has built a ton of character throughout the years, which you can totally see in its design. The stadium has 2 massive sideline stands to hold thousands of fans, one empty end line, and the other being filled with a curved stand that holds the loudest fans in the park. The whole stadium has a much more retro / just plain out old vibe than a lot of these other high-ranked stadiums have. However, unlike Dick's Sporting Goods Park, it really works. I think this is mostly just due to the fact that this stadium is old in a different way than most of the early MLS stadiums are. It truly has a strong, decades-long history and ties to the city rather than just being considered a quote-unquote old MLS stadium and thus really only being like 20 years old. Quote-unquote old MLS stadiums are in a weird, awkward area where their facilities are not old enough to provide as great of a game day experience, while also not being able to make up for that with a rich history. However, Providence Park truly is a Frankenstein stadium that has been built over a century and seen many different phases, giving it its quirky look and rich character. MLS lacks a lot of these old school pitches that maybe aren't exactly the most modern or efficient high-tech stadiums, but are truly loved by the city, built with tons of history, and ultimately have been loved by multiple generations. Providence Park truly is the closest thing MLS has to a Wrigley Field or a Fenway Park, and I think it's important to show older stadiums like this some love and show owners and organizations alike that if you have a stadium that is truly loved by a fan base, there's no reason just to make a cookie-cutter new and modern stadium because the old one is getting older. Just give it the proper renovations it needs, and with that, we can start to build some incredible soccer historical sites in our country. Ultimately, the unending love that Portland has for the stadium and the beautiful tapestry of stories that the stadium has to tell really just want to make me put it here on the list, and in all honesty, it might even deserve to be higher. But for now, I'm going to keep it here at number 7.
It down. Moreno, it's a great turn off the chest. Moreno on the run, options either side. Moreno! It bounces in off the back of Ochoa!
Number 6, Q2 Stadium of Austin FC. Q2 Stadium does such a good job of using color to really make their stadium feel like it truly is their club stadium. Shades of green to represent Austin, as well as making cool patterns and logos with the coloring, makes the stadium look absolutely gorgeous and just screams Austin. Every seat in the house once again gets a perfect view of the field and gives the building a really sweet, intimate experience. Being in an extremely hot state, there is roofing around the entire stadium to cover all the seating and provide shade, as well as being very highly elevated from the seats to allow a lot of the heat to escape into the atmosphere and not get caught up in the stands. This highly elevated roofing also does a great job at trapping the atmosphere of the stadium and the sound to strike fear into opponents' hearts. All of this while giving the stadium a really sweet, open vibe to it without feeling incomplete and amateurish. Austin really has done the best job in Texas at making a stadium that fans want to go to for game day. They also do this super cool thing right before the games and when they score goals where the bright white lights turn into an extremely dark verde green, which gives off such an incredible vibe and truly is something you can't describe, you can only see it. Apparently these lights can actually create a range of over 2 million RGB color combinations, and it's just so cool to see such like high-tech features like this in MLS stadiums. With all this being said, fuck Precourt for what he tried to do to the crew, but goddamn does his money make a badass stadium.
Never in the Timbers MLS history, and they had so many attempts with so few of them that actually hit the target. Here's Gallagher, able to control as they backed off. Ronnie comes, the cross back in, Gallagher! John Gallagher! Austin FC's first goal in Q2 Stadium!
Number 5, Exploria Stadium of Orlando City. This is another stadium that uses color to their advantage very well. The dark purple that is Orlando makes for an extremely pretty stadium. They also have an Orlando made in text with yellow seats in one of the stands, which looks super dope. The lion sign on the corner of the building looks really cool too, and all of this just comes together perfectly to make the stadium home. The lower seating bowl is 360 degrees, thus making the stadium feel very complete, even with the roofs that don't cover the entirety of the stadium. Orlando also had the first ever MLS safe standing supporter section, which started a really cool trend in MLS stadiums that have helped fuel stronger game day atmospheres. The exterior also looks super cool and unique with the metal bars reaching out above the roof. I just really love this stadium and I feel it's very bold and unique without looking ridiculous. Also, a really sweet gesture that the stadium has as well are 49 rainbow colored seats in Section 12 as a memorial to honor victims of the 2016 Orlando nightclub shooting.
And meanwhile, a permanent tribute to the victims of Pulse has officially been unveiled.
Yeah, and it's right in the heart of Orlando City's new soccer stadium. Yesterday, the team unveiled 49 rainbow-colored seats in Section 12 of the stadium. They really look nice, and that's to honor the victims killed on June 12th. The team hopes the seats will serve as a reminder to the world of the city's inclusive, diverse, and welcoming community. Orlando City will kick off its season at the new stadium on March 5th. So a great gesture there.
And one of the few things that we have seen of the new stadium, I like that they revealed that before we even got to walk in.
Absolutely. They have that and new grass. So
and it's real.
And it's real grass, Troy.
I do think this really shows a genuine love for the community. The organization expresses a very welcoming environment to show people of certain communities, such as the LGBTQ+ community, that they are loved, welcome, and supported by the club. At the end of the day, the world has a lot of hate in it, and I think it's little things like this that you see, and it reminds you that there is more love out there than hate, even if it's easier to see the hate sometimes. Props to Orlando City. I love this stadium.
Kaká takes it, and it's deflected and gone in! A goal that will be etched into Orlando history, and it's Kaká who has done it.
Number 4, we have Geodis Park of Nashville SC. Geodis Park is a beautiful soccer cathedral. The 30,000 seating capacity soccer-specific stadium makes it the largest of its kind in the United States and Canada alike. My uncle actually worked for a construction company, and his company was one of the many companies that got to work on the stadium, so I have a very distant connection to the stadium, which is kind of dope. The stadium has a really simple yet modern looking exterior that gives off a very welcoming vibe. Being a somewhat open style stadium, it makes it feel like the party doesn't stop as soon as you leave the stadium. The open design allows outsiders to hear the roars of the crowds, which is super cool, and it does all this while keeping that imposing and loud feeling within the stadium. The park has a butt ton of seats, so thousands of fans are screaming and generating tons of noise, which all gets captured by the 360-degree roof that really holds that noise down. The seating itself is a really cool color and some dope patterns, as well as a Nashville written into one of the sideline stands with their yellow. Being in the city of music, live performances are a huge part of the game day activities, which adds just another awesome part to the experience of going to a Nashville game. And I think Geodis Park is just a perfect example of teams investing in exciting and fun to go to venues, with it paying off and the city attending games in droves, helping expand MLS and its influence in our country. I don't really have too much more to say, honestly. Just an awesome stadium. Nashville invested heavily and it really paid off.
That was so funny, he wasn't on the line. He killed the ball.
So that brings us to our podium stadiums. At number 3, we have Lower.com Field of Columbus Crew. Columbus Crew is one of my favorite teams in MLS ever for a bunch of different reasons. I've actually been working on a video about the Crew's history, but that's been in the works for a couple months, and I've been working on it very off and a little bit on, so that's going to take a while to come out. But one of the main things that I love about the Crew is that they're always pushing the limits to what MLS stadiums can be. Being the creators of the first ever soccer-specific stadium in the US, with the Columbus Crew / Map-Free Stadium, and being the first team to construct and relocate to a second soccer-specific stadium, Lower.com is a perfect point to represent the incredible marketing and branding the Crew have always had. The original black and yellow checkered pattern was so synonymous with the Crew, and they truly have the most recognizable branding in the league in my opinion. However, as time goes on, things get old and you ultimately need to adapt and shift your club to fit the ever-changing markets. In my opinion, the seating and the general design choices of the new Lower.com field just scream Columbus Crew in their newest modern era. The gray seating pattern looks incredible on its own, and also just allows for a perfect base or background for the highlights of the bright yellow Crew fans' jerseys during the game. Every seat has a great view. This is just another roof that covers every part of the stadium and helps with that game day vibe. And the stadium just feels really complete and modern. The stadium also has some pretty interesting features for special needs people who have trouble with sensory overload. With the stadium successfully trapping the roars of the crowd, it can get pretty loud in the stadium, which is difficult for a lot of people with auditory sensory issues. So Lower.com actually has these really cool sensory rooms to allow for a place to watch the game in the stadium and still have a great experience, with it being a bit quieter and easier for people who have auditory sensory issues. Little things like this really make a club feel like they care about their community and want to accommodate everybody in their community, even if it isn't as lucrative financially. The exterior is also very simple, but it just works so well, making the stadium look very sleek, modern, and badass. Columbus is really one of the best soccer markets in this country and has always been pushing what is possible for MLS. It's hard to believe that at one point they almost lost their club. So anyways, stay massive, Crew. I love Lower.com. Number 3. Number 2, City Park of STL City. So I am 100% biased, and I'm not even going to deny that because I'm from St. Louis and I'm a huge City fan, but goddamn, City Park is fucking awesome. I was only able to go to one game this first season because the tickets were so expensive due to like the insane demand. I went to the STL versus Kansas game on September 30th, 2023, where STL won 4-1, and oh my god, the feeling within that stadium that night was something else. Once again, it's something that you truly cannot explain, you can only experience. I was screaming so fucking loud the first goal that I almost passed out and I had to recollect myself. The 32-acre City Park Stadium District is the biggest urban professional sports campus in the entire country. The stadium, team headquarters, team store, and practice facilities are all on the same footprint. And for an MLS team to have this huge of an influence and spot carved into a downtown metropolitan area is truly a sign of good things to come for the MLS's future. It really allows for so many different pre-game activities, and the game day atmosphere at St. Louis is found nowhere else in the league. The field is 40 feet below the street level to allow more seating to be packed into the urban stadium, which allows for 22,423 seats squished into the stadium. The roof covers the entire surrounding border of the stadium and helps keep out the bad weather, keep the noise in, and prevents outside annoying shadows from being cast onto the field by nearby skyscrapers. The food options are incredible. The stadium designers did such a good job of reaching out to local brands to really get a variety of incredible local foods and brands into the stadium. The seating is another thing that I absolutely love. The quick change from the dark blue to city red on top really scream STL City, and the large city made with white seats on the eastern side of the stadium is just perfect. City Park does a very similar thing that QT Stadium does so well with their powerful LED lights that can show a crazy variety of different colors, and when those dark red lights turn on, it's fucking unreal. The seats are also at field level, which only makes the game feel even more intimate, as some seats are literally 15 feet away from the field. City Park is just MLS stadiums done so right, and the soccer capital of the country has truly deserved a stadium like this for a very long time. I could talk about City Park forever, so I'm going to cut myself here so we can move on to the absolute best MLS stadium in the entire league, in my opinion.
lately. Talk about his assists. He has a couple goals in back-to-back games. Canadian Championship. Hassan makes the first stop. Kid the second. It's the local kid, Miggy Perez. In the 94th, a moment he will not forget, nor will the St. Louis locals.
Well, Vanni Sartini and the Vancouver Whitecaps have just absolutely lost it in their technical area. What we thought was going to be a foul in favor of the Vancouver Whitecaps turned to possession for St. Louis, which leads to the foul that...
That being none other than number 1, Alliance Field of Minnesota United. Minnesota United, while they might not have been blessed with great success on the field, the club is blessed with the best stadium this league has ever seen, in my opinion. The interior of the stadium is truly something that I think every stadium should strive for. The colors, the patterns, the logos, everything, it just fits and makes the whole stadium feel so gorgeous. There are 17 different types of seating. It has a safe standing supporters section, has this huge bike parking area. It has a huge retail store in the stadium, Wi-Fi that actually works, a massive video board, a 360-degree canopy, beautifully done LED light system. Within 30 miles of the stadium are 1.9 million Minnesotans' homes. The closest seating is 17 feet from the pitch. It's designed to truly be sustainable, and it has a fucking grass playing field in Minnesota, which is genuinely a feat of its own. There are just so many cool things about the stadium that go above and beyond what most MLS stadiums are. One of the coolest parts of the stadium is the Grand Casino Brew Hall. This area has so many brews for you to try during the game, and it has a beautiful view of the field from the inside, with garage doors that open for you to watch the game. And right above the brew hall is one of the coolest features any MLS stadium has, that being their manual scoreboard that they have people changing manually throughout the game, which adds just another dimension of community and character to the stadium. Touching back on the LED light system, it truly is one of the best in the country. The entire exterior can be lit up, which looks fucking dope, and they can even do similar light effects that City Park and Q2 have done within the stadium that look genuinely awesome. Parts of the stadium have the steepest seating in the entire league, which really further emits that impending, suffocating feeling onto away teams. This seating is filled by the Wonderwall, which is their famous fan support section, which is one of the best in the country. Everything about this stadium just works. I honestly can't think of anything that I don't love about it, and Minnesota truly deserves this spot more than any other stadium in this league right now. I don't even know what else to say, honestly. I fucking love your stadium, Minnesota.
Minutes of added time. 4.5 minutes for Minnesota to score and claim a playoff spot. Dodson inside. Alonso touched inside. Hassani Dodson!